3 more years. We have 3 more years of Micheal Ferland. And this is not going to be a video where I start hating on Ferland or whatever. This is just asking, what's next? What's next with Micheal Ferland? And furthermore, what should we expect when he inevitably does come back? And side note, is there even going to be a realistic scenario where he comes back in the near future? Because Micheal Ferland is on the LTIR after suffering concussions. Let's just say concussions, because there were many things that led up to this. He had a concussion on October 30th, and then when he hit a guy when he came back, he was out again. He's not necessarily in concussion protocol, but like, there are things that he'll need to clear up, I guess. That's why he's seeing specialists, right? But Micheal Ferland is on the LTIR, and he's probably going to stay there for a while. So one may ask, what exactly should we expect when he comes back, and how exactly have things gone thus far, despite being in the Vancouver Canucks system for a small, limited amount of time here? Let's just start off by saying that Micheal Ferland coming to Vancouver isn't something that necessarily surprised me, because even back when he was a Carolina Hurricane, pending free agency, there were people talking about whether or not the Vancouver Canucks would make a trade for Micheal Ferland. I remember specifically sitting in my online design class back in semester 2, making a thumbnail for whether or not the Canucks would trade for Ferland, and that was a video where we talked about trading for Ferland and what he could bring, etc, etc, etc. Eventually, he signed with Vancouver a few days after free agency started as a free agent, and that didn't surprise me because the Canucks were in need of wingers, but the Canucks were also linked to Ferland previously because of the trade rumors. So Ferland coming over to Vancouver was something that I was really excited about, because when I saw Ferland and I looked at his stats, I looked at the player that he projected to be, I saw a consistent point-scoring winger who could get heavily under his opponent's skin. When I thought of Micheal Ferland, I thought of the Ferland that terrorized the Vancouver Canucks and Kevin Bieksa all the way back in the 2015 playoffs for Calgary. That was the Ferland that I thought about, and that was the Ferland that I was like, okay, hell yeah, we have that guy now. I hated him 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, or whatever, but hey, it'll be nice to see him on our side of the town this time. And a lot of people were thinking that he would be the mainstay number 1 left wing. The guy to play with Pettersson and Boeser, the guy to complete that line and form what would have been like a West Coast Express 2.0 kind of thing. Eventually, we do recognize what happened. He played with Pettersson and Boeser. He wasn't all too great. JT Miller was a much better fit, and Ferland got buried further in the lineup, eventually finishing off his Vancouver Canucks little tenure with 14 games played and only 5 points. It's really not great. And for a guy who was at 40 points last year and 40 points the year before that, a guy who's scored 20 goals in the past and who isn't all too old either, he's only 27, a lot of people can say that they're really disappointed with what Micheal Ferland has brought to the table thus far. However, the arguments to combat that definitely do exist. Hey, concussions. Hey, the injuries. Hey, he missed a big portion of the beginning of the season because he was sick with the flu. A flu, mind you, that caused him to lose like 10, 15 pounds or whatever it was. Micheal Ferland from the get-go was never in a position to actually establish himself as the same player that scored 40 points last year. And me sitting here talking about Ferland, I'm thinking that I'm trying to hit that point home, that we never really got the Ferland that we expected just yet. Which is why I'm kind of looking forward to seeing him when he comes back, because now that he's on that long-term injury reserve, this gives him the opportunity to really set back, settle down, and say, okay, I'm only coming back when I'm ready. I don't want to set any implications here, but maybe when Ferland came back a few weeks ago before he got injured again, maybe back then he was feeling like he was at 100%. Maybe he was. I don't know. but having this LTIR time will give him the opportunity to really recuperate and find himself once again. When he was placed on LTIR, they said he was feeling symptoms of other stuff, pretty much. He doesn't feel perfect, and he needs to see specialists. If that's the kind of thing that was exemplified when Ferland was playing in the most recent game, then I don't want to see him coming back until he's ready. I highly doubt that these are the kind of things that are brand new, and only one game's worth of playing time is going to give him these really bad symptoms. I doubt that. In my opinion, in my completely unprofessional and completely speculatory opinion, this might have been something that he was carrying with him throughout the year. So, the long-term injury reserve time is going to give him the opportunity to only come back when he is 100%. Which is why I'm sitting here not saying that Ferland is a bust or whatever. I'm not going to say that Ferland is eternally doomed and we have 3 more years of a worthless contract. What I'm going to say is that we haven't seen the best of him yet. The Ferland we've seen all year hasn't been the best. And we know he can be better. He was better a year ago. He was better just give it a few calendar months ago. Ferland was a much better hockey player than what we've seen thus far with the Canucks. When we did see him, he was doing the things that we were really annoyed with 4 years ago. He was banging bodies out there. He was doing a lot of hits, and he was getting his licks in. He did get into a fight, which wasn't the best for him. He got injured off of that. But he still exhibited that swagger. Now, all that's left is for him to find his offensive game. He didn't do that with Petey and Brock, which is why he got moved down the lineup. JT Miller is just a player who is like Ferland in terms of the gritty board battles, finding the puck, but he's a little bit more skilled than Ferland is in that respect. But Ferland, playing that same style of game, wasn't really all too great with Vancouver thus far, and a lot of that does have to do with opportunity too. Playing Ferland with Horvat is great, and I'm sure those two will find chemistry eventually, but Horvat hasn't been all too great this year anyway. So having a Ferland who's trying to find his pace, playing with a guy who has been struggling like Horvat, doesn't seem like the best scenario to me. So, eventually, I hope that when he does come back, everything does look fine a little bit more. Maybe Horvat starts to find his game more too, because he hasn't been great. Stick Ferland with Horvat or whatever and see how things work from there. Or maybe even try him out with Petey and Brock once again. Break up the Lotto line. Put Miller back over with Horvat. If Horvat is better by then Miller and Horvat could have some pretty good chemistry. And maybe then we'll have the lines that we thought we would coming into the season. Because believe me, that would be a pretty interesting thing. If Ferland can mesh with Pettersson and Boeser properly, we're in for a pretty good line. It's just that we haven't seen that properly just yet. But as of right now, that's another hole on our winger depth. We've been calling up guys left and right. We talked about Zach McEwen the other day, always going up and down on the Utica Comets Instagram feed. That was really, really noteworthy to me. But this Vancouver Canucks team is eventually going to find Ferland back, and when he does come back, I'm looking forward to it. Because that player that did get 40 points, 20 goals with Carolina, I'm pretty sure he still exists. And I'm really looking to see how he fares with Vancouver, because, let's face it, he's got 3 more years to show us that he can. And if he doesn't do anything in those 3 years, I would be way more surprised than if he just comes back and he starts playing great. Not everybody can be a Louis Eriksson. Not everybody can be super ineffective the moment they arrive. And for a guy who's only on a $3.5 million cap hit, I certainly don't believe that Ferland is that kind of player. The playstyles are just too different. And Ferland offers something that this Vancouver Canucks team kind of does need, which is that grit, which is that rough physical play. Having Ferland terrorize a team out there on the ice, and then he goes off on a change and Antoine Roussel comes right after, that's a pretty good scenario. I like the sound of that. It's just that we're going to have to wait a little bit for Ferland to actually find his game and establish himself as that player who is effective on the scoreboard as he is physically. Hope you enjoyed this video, Social Dive 99, and bye.